we need to talk a little bit about what beliefs are so you understand how they work. Beliefs are not right or wrong. Beliefs are just subjective. They're things which you experience, or things which you buy into, or things which people have told you. So in your case, your experience is, I can't control my mind for more than 5 minutes. So that then becomes a belief because it's an experience. And the problem with that, it's circular. Because if I can only control my mind for 5 minutes, and then I develop a belief, even if I then in the future could control it for more, the belief will limit it. And after 5 minutes, this is amazing, everybody listen, that because he believes he can only control it for 5, even if he tries to control it more, subconsciously at 5 minutes he'll just lose focus. Because that belief is subtly dictating your action. Is that amazing? That's crazy, actually, isn't it? Well, it's good if you had a belief that I could control my mind for 2 hours, because even if you couldn't, you would. Because that belief would program you to do it, right? So, once you understand that, then you realize, well, if I could change my belief, then I could change things, how things materialize externally. Because if I believe I could only control my mind for 5 minutes, I'm not going to try. And then, as I said, subconsciously after 5 minutes, I'll get distracted, because that's what's supposed to happen, right? Let's take another belief. Marriage. All marriages are bad. So you have a perfect chart with your wife, everything lines up. You will make sure your marriage is bad, because if it isn't, that goes against your belief. Right? And that your reality has to align with what you believe. So you'll make sure that happens. Right? Let's say you have a belief that all relationships are bad. If you have a good relationship, you will make sure that goes bad in order to confirm your belief. Isn't that amazing? You believe that? It's true. People do that. So now you understand that your belief is based on your experience. But your experience it's not universally true for everybody, and it's only true for you right now. And if you could believe that I could control my mind for 2 hours, if you actually believed into that, that's what would happen. Because your belief has to create the reality. It's just the way the subconscious has to become conscious. So if you could believe that it's possible to control your mind for 2 hours, you would start seeing that that's what would start happening. But as long as you allow that belief of 5 minutes, after 5 minutes you're on automatic pilot, you just lose control. You expect that to happen. You basically wait for it to happen. Isn't that crazy? So then your attempts to control your mind will always fail, because underlying your attempt is a belief that it can't happen. You know, a lot of us set a vow, and internally we have a belief that we can't do it, and that's why we fail. Not because we can't do it, but because we believe we can't do it. And the problem is, when you can't do it, then you see, I told you I couldn't do it. That proves I was right. Right? So all that's happening is the belief is showing up because we believe it, and then reinforcing the belief. That's the problem. You understand? Am I confusing you? I think we need to talk about just a little more so you all get clear. I think that the best thing about this is that you can change your beliefs. You can decide to believe something that's better for you. Now, the point is, a lot of us believe things that are going against what we want to achieve. I want to achieve A, but I believe B, so I always get B, even though I think I want A, or I do want A, but my beliefs undermine A, and they give me B. So if you're constantly trying for something, and you're not getting it, even though you think you're focused and you're working for it, it's likely you have a belief that's not allowing you to achieve it. That's saying you can't achieve it, or all you can achieve is B. And so what we want to do is we want to look at our vows, we want to look at our beliefs, and then we want to say, what would be a belief that would support this vow? Like, I can do it, it's easy to do, I can control my mind if I focus on it, or whatever problem you faced, you just reframe your belief in a way that will support it. Now, what this means is we all have many beliefs, and many beliefs we have are actually going against what we're trying to achieve in life. You know, like I don't know if I gave this example, but it's a fantastic example. You have a situation where you want to become successful as a business person. And there's another business person that's 10 times or 100 times more successful than you. And you don't like it. It makes you unhappy. And you think, this guy is successful because he's a cheater. And so then you put in your mind that all the people who are successful are cheaters. And you're an honest person, so therefore you can never become successful. Because to be successful, you'd have to be a cheater. And that's why you never succeed. Because you think, now that sounds really very elementary and even stupid, and you think I'm making it up, but it's actually how it works. It's how the mind works. So whatever you discovered is one of many beliefs you have that are going against something you want to achieve. So if I can get you to believe that you can concentrate, you will find it very easy to concentrate. If I can or you can get yourself to believe that. And as I said before, the main thing is, it's not about what's right or wrong, it's about what you believe. Because your mind doesn't analyze what's right and wrong. Your mind just believes. Like he believes, people will like him if he doesn't talk, because that's what he was told. Is that true, that people don't talk, everybody loves them? And is it true that people talk a lot are not lovable? No, it's not true. In fact, the people who talk a lot are the ones on television with the big television shows, right? So talking a lot is also good. So he heard something, it made sense to him, he was rewarded for not talking, and that developed a belief that if you don't talk, people will like you. So it was one little event, and that molded his whole life. Now that's not necessarily true, but for him it's true. So right now he can change that. If he wants, if he realizes, that belief doesn't help me, I can just change it. Because the belief isn't right or wrong. So it can be molded any way that will help support me. Obviously, we want to mold our beliefs to align with what Krishna says. Right? Am I confusing you? Did you all have this realization by doing this exercise? It wasn't, that you had some belief that was completely at the heart of preventing you from. And how many of you realized when you understood the belief? How many of you realized where it came from? Like he realized where it came from. Raise your hand if you realize. Like I realized this is my belief that, let's say, if I try and I fail, I'll kill myself. I can't stand to fail. And then you realize that's the belief. How many of you realized when you understood the belief where it came from? Raise your hand if you realized. Okay, so all of you who have the belief, what I would suggest you to do, try to figure out where you got it. Was it from an experience? Was it from something somebody said? Was it something that's just generally believed in your community? It was just passed down to you? Was it a social value? Was it statistics? You read statistics and therefore you believe? That's how beliefs come. And when you understand where it comes, you understand better this idea that beliefs aren't right or wrong. It's just something that I accepted. My teacher said, if you don't talk, I was rewarded for not talking. So that became his truth. It's not true, but it was true in his school. Now, another interesting thing about beliefs is sometimes you have beliefs that work for you. Like this worked for him in school, but now when he goes outside of school, it doesn't work so well. So it was a good belief to have in school. Not such a good belief to have when you're working in the corporate world or you join ISKCON. Right? Because we're all about sharing and opening up and talking. So sometimes you have a belief that, people with blue eyes are bad because a blue-eyed person stole my lunch. And there's only about 3 blue-eyed people in India, so I'm going to watch out for them, right? So that might help you so you don't get your lunch stolen, when you were 6 years old, right? But now you're 65 years old and you still hate people with blue eyes. So it had a function when you were 6, doesn't have a function when you're 66. So a lot of the beliefs you have, they made sense when you were younger. Now you become devotees, so you have beliefs from before you're devotees that don't work in devotional service. But you didn't change them when you became a devotee, you just kept them. And you didn't realize that you brought in beliefs that are not functional. Does that make sense? Okay. You had a question, yes.
Sometimes for when I'm chanting, I feel that actually I couldn't prepare very well my consciousness the previous day. So because of which I cannot chant.
Oh, okay. That's a very good one. He's saying, yesterday was a bad day, so when I sit down today to chant in the morning, I already know the rounds are going to be bad. Something like that?
Yeah. I cannot focus.
Yeah, I cannot focus. Why? It's the same thing. Because I had that experience. Let me tell you something. Everybody knows that if you chant your rounds in the morning, they're better than if you chant your rounds in the evening. Rounds in the evening are... rounds in the evening are, they're always done like this. Hare Krishna, 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 right? Because you're trying to catch up. Or they're done like this. Hare Krishna. Because you're tired, right? So everybody knows that rounds in the evening cannot be as good as rounds in the morning. Now, I have a question for you. Is that absolutely true? Yes or no? Raise your hand if it's absolutely true. That's a belief. That's your belief. Because it's not absolutely true. Because I could get you to chant the best rounds of your life in the evening. I could do that. And how would I do that? By convincing you that you could chant the best rounds of your life in the evening. And I could convince you, I guarantee. How many of you have ever chanted really good rounds in the evening? Raise your hand. See? But because we think good rounds are chanted in the morning, bad rounds are chanted in the evening, as soon as you pick up your bead bag, it's pretty much guaranteed those rounds are going to be bad. Because those rounds are dictated by your belief. Correct? So, you have a belief that bad yesterday means bad today. Right? Now I have to change your belief. Bad right now is conditioned only by one thing, by you. And you're thinking about this moment right now. No matter what happened yesterday, right now, at this moment, at 6 o'clock in the evening on Sunday night, you could chant excellent rounds. Yes or no?
Yes.
You can, if you decided to. I'm going to decide. Or if you had my help and I convinced you. You could. We could. I've done japa workshops. We have excellent japa at 6 in the evening in japa workshops. Any time of the day we have excellent japa because we're facilitating it and everybody is focused on the next exercise and everybody's very inspired to chant good rounds and we do it. So it's not true that a bad day or 6 o'clock is a bad time to chant japa. It's only true if you believe it's true. Now, in general, we will say chanting rounds in general is easier in the morning and it's the best time. We don't deny that. But to deny that you can't chant just as good rounds in the evening is false. You'll have to try harder, for sure. And you'll have to be in the mindset that you can do it. That's how beliefs work. Right? As soon as you say everybody knows, there's a belief there. As soon as you say, I can't do that, there's a belief there. As soon as you say, I'm a lazy person, there's a belief there. This is really interesting. I'm not the body. I'm not American. I'm not Russian. I'm not Chinese. I'm not Indian. I'm not. I am not man, woman. And I'm not lazy. Lazy is another identity. It goes along with man, woman, Indian, American, lazy, procrastinator. You understand? When you say those things, you give yourself an identity. When you give yourself an identity, what do? You act it out. Don't ever say I'm lazy. Because when you say it, you'll act that way. Even if you're lazy, don't say it. say, I'm a determined person, I'm focused, I'm fixed, I'm not a lazy person. Because when you say it, you give yourself an identity. And we always act out our identity. We can't act in a different way from how we identify ourselves. And so although we say, I'm not the body, I'm not this, I'm not that, we have so many identities. I'm a procrastinator, I'm a determined person. I'm lazy, I'm smart, I'm unintelligent, I'm average. These are all identities, and they all dictate your behavior. I'm a bad japa chanter at 6 o'clock. That's another identity. I'm a bad japa chanter when yesterday was bad. That's another identity. And they're all focused around beliefs. Does that make sense? Can you relate to that? Yes? No? Maybe? Is there any water? I'm drying up here. Do we have any drinking water? Ah. Oh, yeah, that's my water. Yeah, thank you. We have another question? Yes? You had a question? No? Yes.
Well, it is not a question. Just a couple of months back, one of the devotees, he taught us a small exercise before coming for Mangalarti.
Mm-hmm.
He said, sit in a place, just relax, take a deep breath, and try to, like a meditation kind of a thing. And he told something called as positive affirmations.
Okay.
To yourself. So like, I'm a determined person, as you were telling now.
Mm-hmm.
I chant better rounds.
Mm-hmm.
I always think positive about others.
Yeah,
Always,
right.
So is this what he's trying to do, change the belief?
Yeah. But you have to believe in the affirmations you're saying. It's like you're on your 14th chapati and you say, I don't eat much. Doesn't work, right? So if affirmation's going to work, it's you have to believe it. You know, I'm rich, I'm famous, I'm lovable, I'm this and that. And inside you go, I don't believe that at all. I'm never going to be rich, I'm never going to be famous, and I'm never going to be lovable. It doesn't work. So it has to, the idea of an affirmation is it has to have energy which is in alignment with what you're feeling inside. That you actually, if you say, you have to feel successful. You know, can I lead into another, you have another, okay, all right.
Affirmations are given to change a belief system. It's given to change belief system. It's not that we
Yeah,
believe in the belief.
but you can also change belief systems by acting differently. Like I could change your belief right now. If we chanted one super excellent round at 6 o'clock, I could change your belief about 6 o'clock japa. So sometimes an easy way to change your belief is just act. Act in a way that defeats what you thought you believed. Like where did he go? Our 5-minute japa man. If our 5-minute japa man can chant half hour of focus, that just blows his old belief out of the water. Right? So by believing, then you act, and then you prove that your belief is true. But sometimes even if you don't believe it, at least you try to act that way. And by acting, I could never give a class. Okay, we're going to put you on this seat. And all of a sudden you're sitting there. And you have to do it. And after a few minutes you start talking. And you actually say something like tangible, intelligible, profound, and you say a few more things and people are nodding their head. And all of a sudden, what happened to your belief that you can't talk to crowds? It's completely gone. So sometimes that's the easiest way to change your belief is just act. Now I wanted to address your point. Because one of the topics we didn't discuss is failure. Yeah, we need to discuss failure. Like I can't do it. So, like I'm saying, you're eating 20 chapatis, saying I don't eat much. How do you deal with making a vow and getting very focused on it, getting your beliefs aligned, getting your feelings aligned, and then you fail at some point? How do you deal with it? This is a very important point. Because there's a chance that we don't follow our vows perfectly. And if we don't know how to recover from a setback, then we could end up worse off than if we didn't make the vow. Right? So, we're going to talk about this a little more tomorrow night, but there's a couple ways to deal with it. And the first thing we have to talk about is, when is it okay to give up a vow? This is like amazing because I've got Jagannath in the background. If you want to turn on your phone, go to my Facebook page, you'll see me with Jagannath in the background. It's beautiful. Except my head's in front of Jagannath, unfortunately. But anyway, there's Subhadra. Anyway, it looks like one of those Indian gurus, with the big backdrop. I just need a turban and I'll be big. There are some cases in which we make a vow which it may be beneficial to give up. So you've made a vow, but the result of that vow is it's causing you some kind of physical damage or emotional damage or spiritual damage. And to continue to follow the vow would be wrong. So there are situations like that. Now, for example, you have somebody who's not able to follow all the principles that they vowed to follow, and they have a certain psychology where it causes them like extreme depression. And so, let's say they're chanting 8 rounds a day and they feel a failure. If I can just convince them it's okay to chant 8 rounds a day, then they can feel like a success, right? Instead of a failure. Because sometimes 2 people doing the same thing, one feels like a success and one feels like a failure. What happens to the person who feels like a failure? They're going to keep failing. They'll probably go down to 6 rounds or 4 rounds. Because I've already failed, so what does it matter? I can just keep failing. So sometimes a person in a situation where they realize that, okay, I made this vow, but at this point in my life, I'm not able to keep it up, it would be better to negotiate another vow that they could keep up. And how you do that is you don't give up the ideal. You just understand the ideal is 16 rounds, but in this stage of life right now, if I try to do 16 rounds, it's going to be destructive, or in some way it's going to destroy me because I can't do it, and I'll feel extremely guilty and I'll just want to completely give up, or I'll go into some kind of state of depression. So that's not a good thing, right? To put a devotee in depression. So sometimes a disciple may negotiate with their guru. Say, for this reason, that reason, I can't do 16, and they'll negotiate and say, okay, do 8. But don't minimize the goal of 16. That's the goal. You understand that's the goal. So you could apply this to many things in your life. I'm supposed to be here, but right now I'm here, and somehow I can't get here. And by being here, it's causing a lot of negativity. So I have to make some peace with here, with the hope that maybe next year I'll be here, next year here, next year here, and then eventually I'll be back up to here. So we don't give up the goal. That would be the mistake, to give up the goal. But okay, now I'm just regrouping myself and realizing in my particular condition now, this is what I can do. So to be in success consciousness is very important, isn't it? If any of you are in failure consciousness, it's going to breed more failure. Right? You understand? Unless you're a very strong person who can use failure to strengthen you. Oh, I'm only doing 8. I have to be more determined. I failed. Let me get back on my feet and move forward. That's a different consciousness. We'll talk about that later. But the consciousness of this is all I can do, and therefore I'm failing, has to be switched into, okay, this is what all you can do now. So for you, this is what you do, and that's your success. Then you can feel successful, because that's positive energy. Does that make sense? Don't use it as an excuse, but it's just, if you come to that point, and it's having a very negative effect on you, to follow that vow strictly, then you may have to give it up. What would be another scenario? Another scenario, perhaps you're married and there's physical violence or sexual abuse in a marriage that is damaging you or your children. So you've made a vow to stay together, but you're looking at the ramifications of it and you realize, I need to be separate for my own welfare and the welfare of my children. Does that happen sometimes? And we don't generally advise people to separate or divorce unless there's a situation where a man is out of control. He's actually sick and he can't be controlled and he continually commits violence to his wife. and the children are being basically destroyed by it, then to protect herself and her children, she may have to break her vow, her marriage vow, because now it's a higher principle. So sometimes you have to look at a higher principle, like the story, the Brahmin doesn't lie, and then the criminals are looking for people, and they hide in his house, and then he shouldn't tell the criminals they're in his house, but he does, and then the criminals come and kill them. So sometimes you may break a vow for a higher purpose, right? What would be another case scenario? I'm going to wake all of you up right now. You know how I'm going to wake you up? We're going to talk about sex right in the temple. Wow, you awake? We need to talk about, in any workshop on vows, you need to talk about the definition of illicit sex. What does illicit sex mean? There are several definitions. One definition is that illicit sex means if you're a brahmachari, there's no sex. Vanaprastha, no sex. Sannyas, no sex. If you're married, sex in marriage, only for children, 50 rounds. That's the gold standard. Everyone's not on the gold standard. So if you're not following gold standard, the general no illicit sex means no sex outside of marriage. Sex is only for procreation, no contraception. Maybe no 50 rounds. That's a general lower standard, right? So that still falls in the category of no illicit sex. If you can't do it here, you do it there. So in some vows, like 16 rounds. Were they good? Were they excellent? No, but I did 16. So that's a lower standard of 16. But you did 16. They weren't very good, but you did 16. So if you follow this higher standard of illicit sex, you'll be more Krishna conscious. But if you follow a lower standard, it's not sinful. It may impede your devotional service a little bit, but it's not considered illicit sex per se. It's just considered a lower standard. And a lower standard, you get a lower result. You're not going to come to Shuddhanam until that point where you can give it up. But some people, if you hold them to this standard, it'll destroy their marriage. Because the guy will go crazy, or the woman will go crazy, or they'll both go crazy. And so sometimes in a marriage, one of the partners has to give in to maintain stability. There's a story, I think Jayapataka Maharaj told this story, that they told Prabhupada that a married man was seeing a prostitute. And Prabhupada's first response was, isn't he married? Because the idea was in Grihastha life, there's no sex unless there's procreation. So the result was he was going to a prostitute, and Prabhupada was appalled by that. He said, you shouldn't go to a prostitute. No illicit sex also means in marriage. But so we sometimes have to make these compromises to maintain the marriage, because woman doesn't want her husband going to a prostitute, right? So there are different standards. And so different standards for different people in different situations. So you may say, my standard is up here. That's fine. One of the big mistakes we make in ISKCON is that our standard becomes everyone's standard. Right? You have to do this because Prabhupada said this, Bob, but we're all different. So we're all in different standards. We all can't do that. It would be nice if we could. So within standards, there's standards that may be not perfect, but they're not considered sinful. So the main thing is you don't want to end up in a position where you're always beating yourself up. Because if you're always beating yourself up, it's so negative, it disempowers you from going forward. So let's say, now we're going to use an example, what to do if you actually fall. Not that you just lower your standard, but you just, whoops, you broke your standard. Hey, that was dramatic, right? Yeah. I could pull this around for dramatic effect. Yeah. So, you lower your standard is one thing, but it's still within the realm of following your principle or adjusting your principle. So now you've adjusted it to 8 because for whatever reason, if you try to chant more, you'll end up in the mental hospital or something. or it doesn't work, or this standard of illicit sex, if I do that, I'll become, I just can't. It'll be destructive. So what in the case you actually fell down? You broke some principle. You broke some vow. How do you deal with that? Well, the first thing you want to do is retrace your steps. Is that how did that happen? You ever slip down a stairway and kind of like look back and try to figure out where the wet step was? Or how many of you have that experience? It's like, especially because you're going to go down that stairway again, you don't want that to happen again. So you want to figure out, was there banana peel, was there oil, was there water? Should I wipe it up? So you want to trace your steps. So I fell. Okay, what happened? How did I end up? What were the causes and the effects that brought me to this position? Can I trace it back and then understand now in the future where I slipped so I don't make that mistake again? Because sometimes you can never correct yourself. You can never become strong if you don't fail. You know that? Sometimes you have to fail to understand what went wrong. Because maybe you thought you were invincible and then you fail. Now you realize, I'm not invincible and I shouldn't have done this. I got a little too close to the fire and I burnt. So one of the things that we didn't have time to teach, but a principle we touched on it a little bit, is that if you want to follow a vow, you have to create an external environment around you that protects you. So now I'm a man, I'm an IT engineer, and I decide to move in the temple and become a brahmachari. Lifestyle has to switch a little bit. My relationship with women is going to switch a little bit, right? Because I'm brahmachari now and there are different standards. So if you're going to make a vow, you have to protect yourself by certain do's and don'ts. And so sometimes when you fall, you realize the do's and don'ts you didn't do, and the do's you should have done and the don'ts you should have avoided, you didn't do, or you don't. You're really confused now, right? You don't do that. Yeah. So then you realize your mistakes. And so now realizing your mistakes, you won't make that mistake ever again because it caused you to slip, right? I was running down. How come you slipped down the stairway? Because I was running and jumping 4 stairs at a time. That's why. Or I was riding my skateboard down the stairs. That's why. So I'm not going to do that again, right? So failing can be a very positive thing if you take it that way. If you say, when you fail, the first question you ask is, what can I learn? Then you can learn something you didn't know, and it can be a very positive thing, so it doesn't happen again, and you become stronger by failing. So that's the way we're supposed to do it. The other way to do it is, I'm such an idiot, I'm such a jerk, I'm so stupid, I do this all the time. And then what happens when you say that? If you say, I'm an idiot, I'm a jerk, I'm stupid, what do tomorrow? You act like a stupid, idiot jerk. Isn't it? That's why Prabhupada said, you should think you're a fool before the Guru, but don't act like one. And Prabhupada said, be childlike, not childish. So there's a difference, I'm a fool before my Guru, but I don't act foolishly. So if I say I'm a fool, the mistake may be I may act like one. Right? We're on a time. We have to talk after, okay? So now how do we deal with the guilt that comes when you fall down? Okay, everything has to be seen in a positive way. Because if you see things negatively, it can cause you lots and lots of trouble. So guilt can be positive, guilt can be negative. In the mode of ignorance, when you fail, you will give up. You'll say, what's the use? That's the mode of ignorance. Why try? And too much guilt will put you in that, what's the use? You feel so bad that what's the use of trying? Guilt is meant to make you feel bad enough that you try harder. Not so bad that you don't try. You understand? If you do something wrong and you don't feel guilty, everyone will think, what's wrong with you? You did something wrong and you don't even feel guilty. Right? It will be expected that you feel guilty. But if you're sitting in the corner, I'm so bad, I'm so bad, I'm so bad, I'm leaving the temple, I'm leaving this, I'm not going to chant anymore, I'm so bad, everyone will think, what is wrong with you? That's 10 times worse. Right? I mean, they're both bad. So the idea is guilt exists by divine arrangement as information. When you feel guilty, what's the information? I did something wrong. That's the information, right? You know about these people who don't have feeling? Their whole body could be on fire and they don't even feel it. Dangerous, isn't it? If we don't feel guilt, that's not good. Because guilt is an internal barometer that dictates we just did something wrong. Isn't it? We just did something we don't feel is right. We don't believe it. That's guilt. That's why it's there. So if you feel guilty, it can be good because the guilt is telling you, you've just done something wrong, stop doing that. And so you start thinking, okay, I feel guilty. That means because I did this, all right, what am I going to do? How am I going to learn from it? How am I going to correct it? So the guilt becomes self-correcting. So guilt is good. So we don't run away from it. So yes, if you fall, you should feel guilty a little bit, just enough to motivate you to correct yourself. And therefore we have the word remorse. Remorse means I feel bad enough to correct myself. But when guilt descends into ignorance, then it handicaps you. You don't do anything. You just lament. What's the use? I'm so bad. That is the mode of ignorance. That is actually the lower ends of the mode of ignorance. You understand? So there's two things we discussed. How to correct ourselves, readjust if we have to. How to not beat ourselves up if we fall, but how to learn from it and come out of it in a positive way, or readjust to a reality from which we can become stronger. Those are the things, right? So, you'll always do better if you're gentle on yourself. You always do better if you're a little self-forgiving. But you don't want to be so self-forgiving that you don't hold yourself responsible to come to a certain standard. But you don't want to be, but you have to have some degree of self-forgiving because you're going to make mistakes. And those who are not self-forgiving, their lives are very difficult. Now, I'll just say one last thing. I want to try to bring this to an end. The reason some of us are not self-forgiving is because our parents were very heavy on us. And they made us feel like we needed to be better than we were. And so when you don't forgive yourself, it's actually not you not forgiving yourself. It's the words of your parents that you're hearing. It's not coming from you. It's coming from them. And they've been programmed in there. And so when you understand that, you can kind of disassociate from that and realize it's not that you're hard on yourself. They were hard on you and you imbibed it. And so you understand it's not healthy. It's disempowering. It can be healthy if you take it in the right way. Yeah, they wanted me to do better. But if you take it in a certain way where it makes you feel bad, you're not going to do better. You're going to do worse. Right? Why aren't you good enough? Why aren't you good as Anand next door? What's wrong with you? That's not going to help you. Is it? So, now we go out into the world. We have our vows. We have our commitments. We understand a little more about it from this workshop. And we're going to go out enthusiastically and gently and devotedly. Honor our word as best we can. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
In
Can we go? We have to stop now? I have like 25 slides left. You got 3 more hours? Before we stop, let me just look at my last slide. Oh, I have to say something that's really important. There's a few key elements to this workshop I didn't cover. This is very important. How important is this? How important is it? Very important. Are you still awake? Raise your hand if you're still awake. Okay. Amazing. This is very interesting. There was a radio show. I may have told you this before. There was a radio show. A man was being interviewed, and then they asked him a question, how many times have you been married? He said, 27 times. The announcer said, 27? He said, yeah, every year my wife and I get married. We have a marriage every year. We reconfirm. And then I was studying a book, I think a book on vows by a Christian, and he made an amazing point, which really penetrated me. And I think this is maybe one of the most valuable things I could leave you with. He said, when you make a commitment, you have to commit every day. It's not once on your marriage day or once at initiation you committed. He said, every day when you wake up, you have to remake that commitment. Krishna, today, get me through this day, 16 rounds, 4 regular principles. Just get me through by midnight tonight. That's all I'm thinking about is today. And tomorrow morning I wake up, just get me through today. I'm committed today to do this. So many of us think, I made my vow 20 years ago, it's good enough. If you made it 20 years ago and you're not making it every day, there's a good chance you haven't kept it. Whereas if you make the vow, so to commit means to commit daily. It's a very powerful mantra. Write that down. Tattoo it to your heart. Because that's what it means when you take initiation. You didn't commit on that day only. You're committing every day. Now, what if I said tomorrow we're inviting all the initiates? How many initiates do you have in Bangalore? 500? 1,000? 1,000 initiates. We're inviting 1,000 initiates to come tomorrow to reconfirm their vows, to take the 4 vows again. How many do you think would come? What percentage? Yeah, maybe 10%. I actually did this. It's less than 10. That's bad. That means that means we're not committing daily. If we wouldn't be willing to come back and do a formal commitment, what does that mean? We're not committing daily. Because if we are, no problem. Yeah, I'd love to do that. That'd be fantastic. And I think it should be done every year. On January 1st, every initiated devotee, anybody can come and say, make your vows for this year. 16 rounds, or how many rounds? 12, 8, 10, how many principles, whatever it is. You can say it silently to yourself. Nobody will hear it. And make your vows. Wouldn't that be fantastic? I think. Hare Krishna. Everyone, my one last word to you is, please go to my website, mahatmadas.com. I have a project I told you about earlier. If you go to my website, you can see the video and the website about the new project. It's fantastic, stupendous, phenomenal. Everyone should support it. It's the best thing that ever happened. And we're trying to create this online university and have these amazing classes. And it takes a lot of work to create online courses, and I need everyone's support. So go to the website, see what you can do. Maybe you can offer some help in some way, or you know people who can help. In marketing, in video, in administration, logistics, accounting, and donating money to be accounted for also. Or finding somebody that would like to donate to such a project. So all these things are required. So mahatmadas.com, right on the home page you'll see. You can click the video. I'm telling you about the project. It will take you to a link, and then you can link to the website. The website is a model of what we want to do. It's not a real website. It's a model of what we want to create. And you can see there's 65 courses on that website. It's that amazing. 65 courses. Can you believe it? Wouldn't that be amazing if we actually had that? 65 online courses. 20 of them are free. 7 workshops for the corporate world. 9 retreats. That'd be amazing. So that's what we're trying to do. So your help, any donations you give will help this project. Most appreciated. And when you go on the website, you'll see, and then you'll have, I'm sure you have friends and other people that you can inspire. And if you want to talk to me about the project after class, that's also, we can talk about that also. Okay, and as Madhusudan Hari said, if you have any questions, then we'll officially end, and I'll sit here and then we can talk some more. Okay, is that all right? Thank you very much for coming. It's nice to be here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. And I can see all bright faces, more determined. So,
Oh, yeah. You just go to my, if you go to my website,
okay, I got a lot of benefits.
then there's a donation
Okay,
button. I'll give you that.
please be generous with your donations. Keshav God Prabhu will be at the door. And the seminar has been free, but definitely Prabhu's life is dedicated, and he gives only on donations. He doesn't charge for these seminars.
You go there and there's a button.
Keshav God Prabhu
says
will get the
donate.
door. Please do that. Tomorrow, this
And then it
has
has-
been a beautiful cake.
project volume?
And the icing on the cake will be tomorrow.
Oh, it's about $100,000, like 60 lakhs.
To take yourself to a really high level.
Where is the venue?
Please be there in the evening tomorrow. And once
It's
again, please tell
it's
you
going to
that
be
we have program on Tuesday,
online courses,
success principles
so
of
people
Bhagavad
everywhere in the
Gita.
world can take.
It's at the Satvam restaurant in Sadashiv
If you
Nagar.
go
You
to
can
the
go
site
visit
and then you
it
click, you'll
tomorrow.
see the whole.
For this, it's not a
Well, you can write me and
artist
then
walking
we can
on
talk
Tuesday
about it.
evening. You have to register now with
national,
the
just going to come
account
up
number at the
in-
counter.
Not a physical. There's a few physical places, but the main thing is going to be educational, because the physical takes a lot of time and money, and we can reach more people from all around the world. So that's the idea. Thank you. What's your name?
Anand.
Anand. Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, since we're inviting outsiders also, it's like a business, for businessmen.
Yeah, I think we're going to go now.
So it'd
Well,
be nice if,
nice.
you
We'll
are
see
in,
you tomorrow. Yeah,
you're not going to go.
2:45. Hare Krishna.